All right, so December is just in full effect, and Christmas is around the corner. So nothing says Christmas like a battle in the desert between the dwarfs and the dark elves versus the Empire and the high elves. So I was having a lot of fun last night. I was playing with a bit of an unconventional dark elf build, but one that's very like colorful and characteristic of the dark elves. So I had Hellebron on her horse. Um, and then I had her with a Death Hag on a Cauldron and a Sorceress of Shadow. And the idea was basically that these guys were going to gank all the high value targets. And then I had some Dark Riders with repeater crossbows for a little bit of oversight with missile play, mobility, and the ability to pin things in target. And then just a really heavy um, line of infantry. I had the Harganeth Executioners to deal with armor, and then the Sisters of Slaughter to deal with everything else. It was a bit unconventional of me not to take at least one unit of Witch Elves in a Dark Elf roster, so I was not sure how this would work out, but I seemed to have some success with it last night. Granted, I don't know if it was against the highest tier play on the ladder, but these were competitive matches, so it was good fun. Uh, my buddy here, Navarre, he basically took a whole bunch of cannons to pull them like the opposing team into the infantry. And the hope was that these cannons were going to bait them into fighting with my elite infantry. If we lost the range battle, we knew right away we were going to have a hard time, but we were pretty committed to that. And then he liked to take the elite dwarf infantry, so he went with a front line of very heavy iron breakers, which like he said to me when we were playing, we were on Discord. He's like, I like durability. Well, if you like, and predictability, if you like that, then those guys will give it to you. They're not going to do anything amazing, but you know that every match they're going to do what they're supposed to do. The Empire roster was very interesting. It had Franz on foot, which was like sort of a, a death ball build with a warrior priest as well, and then the Jade Wizard. So because they were all on foot, they were able to go very, very wide. Like that's a lot of infantry. They put one unit of artillery off to the side, which was unprotected. But I guess maybe they were hoping to pull some resources over there so that they could just win this fight over here. They wanted to keep that sort of death ball intact. And I'll talk more about that death ball as the fight goes on. The high elves, they're a little bit overlapped here, but they had some archer fire, which I was very concerned about. The Sisters of Avalorn are, like the antithema to, my Harganeth Executioners and my Blackguard of Negron. So I was very concerned about them. And I was hoping that, maybe I could tear through the spear line quickly enough and the cannons keep them online that we would be able to sort of deal with the rest of his army, or at least hopefully he would run out of ammo, failing failing that. So with all that said, let's get this show on the road. So initial volleys going off. Oh, in the corner we've got some sneaky Illyrian rear archers. Those are tough for me to deal with as well because the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows don't have the range to keep up with these Illyrian Reaver archers. And in a trade, because these ones are armor pen and these ones are not, you're not getting as much value. So initial volley is going off. If you look at this line of sight, like this is right over the hill. And I said to my buddy like at the beginning of the game, shit, did you factor in like the micro terrain? Are you going to be able to shoot over the hill with your cannon? And fortunately we were. Some big initial volleys going off with direct hits. So props to the dwarf engineers for really perfecting their craft because that is a hell of a skill shot. And it looks like we were able to get an initial advantage in the artillery duel versus the Empire. That one goes a little bit high, but so good news for us. So at this point, the dwarfs decide to move up. Ungrim Iron Fist is like, I'm not sitting back. I'm a Slayer King. I'm taking it to the enemy. So he pushes up straight forward. Alarielle, I think she's trying to bait out some resources, some initial shots from the Dark Riders with repeater crossbow. She was feeling pretty cavalier in this game. Not afraid of anyone. So we'll see how she does. Initial fire coming down on these iron breakers from the crossbowmen. Uh, I mean, you can do that if you want, but remember, these iron breakers, they have very high armor. They also have shields. So, you know, this is not going to be like a super effective use of the crossbowman ammo. At this time, I guess they didn't have a ton of other sort of low armor targets. So, you know, better safe in shooting than not at all. In the middle, Franz going to work. He tries to interrupt some of these satchel charges from the Iron Breakers and does a pretty good job with that. The Warrior Priest drops Shield of Faith and Hammer of Sigmar, which gives 22 melee attack AoE. And then likewise, Franz drops... oh, maybe it's... Sorry, that's just Franz. Where's the Warrior Priest? I don't know where he went to. Is he here? Oh yeah, that's here. Shield of Faith. Well, anyway, so the Warrior Priest is buffing up Franz. I haven't seen Franz. Does he have some buffs too? Usually Franz has that AoE buff. Let's see. Yeah. So, oh, that's still the Warrior Priest. Franz. There we go. So Reichland Runefang and Stand Your Ground. So that's a very scary combo. So Stand Your Ground plus 27 melee defense plus 16 leadership. Reichland Runefang plus 8 leadership plus 26 attack. So between those two, you've got plus 22 leadership plus 27 melee defense and plus 26 melee attack. And then if you put on top of that another 26, let's see, for the Warrior Priest here, if you put on top of that a damage resistance of 22, a weapon strength buff of plus 6, and battle prayer for plus 26, you're doing plus 52 melee attack. You've got plus 6 weapon strength, plus 22 damage resistance, and plus, if I recall, it was 22 leadership. So this pocket right here of Empire is absolutely like a death and destruction ball that was going to give these Iron Breakers, you know, all they could handle. So recognizing they needed a little bit of help, I drop a Cauldron of blood or whatever. What's it called again? Hellebron's bloody pool thing. Gazercane. Drop a Gazercane to buff these Iron Breakers. Usually the Iron Breakers, if you look at their stats, you know, the melee attack is not normally super high, but this one I popped the Gazercane and Fury of Cane, so they're rocking at 84 melee attack with 43 weapon strength. That's going to hopefully get through some of these buffs that the Empire has been dropping and give them a bit of a chance, because again, the Dwarf player on my team, he has Ungrim Iron Fist. He doesn't have a Dwarf Rune Lord, which is like the most common pick for a Dwarf Lord. So, you know, in this sort of AoE fight, I would expect the Empire to have the advantage, even though the Iron Breakers are going to take a while to cut through. Over here, we've seen two big developments from the High Elf player. Number one, he drops Alarielle the Radiant to disrupt the backline missile fire. Again, I don't think this is really the best use of a support Lord, or Lords in general. I think Lords, like, I mean, Alarielle, she's best used when providing healing to expensive troops, because that's where you're going to get the max value from your heals. And on this unit of Quarrelers, like, it's going to take her forever to cut through the Quarrelers to any significant extent. And if you look, Ungrim Iron Fist has managed to make his way over here. He's put a hurting on Alarielle, so she knows she has to get out of there. But recognizing that she's there, I send over also the Shadow Sorceress and Crone Hellebron. And these two, if they can make contact with Alarielle, like, it's good night, Alarielle. Granted, the High Elf player has put some really nice backline pressure here on the Dwarves. He's got some Reaver Fire going into either the cannon or the Slayers. I think it's a cannon. Or maybe it's the Dark Riders with the Peter Crossbows. Anyway, there's a host of good targets for him to be shooting at. But and the Dragon Princes, recognizing that the Black Guard are nearby, they pull back. But Alarielle, I mean, Hellebron's made contact, and Alarielle is not long for this world. When Hellebron sees a target this low, let's just watch this play out. 3, 2, 1. Like, you're not running anywhere. Sorceress as well. I dropped a Malkoss Mystifying Miasma to make sure that Alarielle couldn't run away, at least not quickly enough, and then Heroic Killing Blow. So that was a costly mistake right off early in the battle from the highest player, and the balance bar is shifting slightly in our favor at this point in time. These Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, with their armor pen missiles, this is a great use of their fire hitting in on these high value Dragonborn targets. And with Alarielle out of the fight, like every one of those bullets is going to cripple the high elf player. Meanwhile, the Sisters of Avalorn, they've decided to shoot into these Ironbreakers, but I do expect that there's a little bit of friendly fire that's going to go on and hit some of these great swords. So yes, you're hitting Ironbreakers, but I wonder if, you know, maybe these Sisters could have instead repositioned to try and take out the Blackguard, who didn't have any other friendly infantry nearby, so there would be no friendly fire, or, you know, maybe snipe out one of these organ guns or cannons, because the Sisters are more than capable of doing that if they get within range. Also, yeah, same thing here. The archers, they're shooting into Ironbreakers, high armor target, non-armor piercing missiles, so it's not the most effective use of your ammunition. Ungrim tries to disrupt a charge from some spearmen here. There's just so many resources committed to the front. There was not much he could do about it. We're just not really wide enough at this point to take care of everything. The Harganeth executioners have moved up to the front, which sort of opened up this back pocket to the spearmen advance and some of the other high elf infantry. So that, in hindsight, was probably a mistake. I think I should have left one unit back here just to maybe help out, and then just sent one unit up to assist the dwarfs. I mean, the dwarfs are still doing pretty strong. They're resolute, and, you know, I did have some Sisters of Slaughter who could have helped out, so yeah. So Hellebron and the Hag Queen, they're trying to figure out, you know, who to attack next. And this is sort of a debate I was having. You got Karl Franz here, so he's obviously like the target you want to take out, right? And Hellebron is a huge duelist. She's super, super strong. But Karl Franz, he has this with... Does he have Karl Miraz? Let's see. It's such a pain to like mouse over these guys. Sorry about that. Where are you, Franz? Yes, he does. Yes, I think I saw it. Oh my god. My sensitivity is too high. Okay. Do I have it? Do I have it? Do I have it? There we go. Reichland Runefang. No, he does not have Garl Maraz. So I was a little bit afraid during the fight that he was going to just anti-large my butt into the ground. So I was hesitant to bring Crone Hellebron over to fight Karl Franz. But in hindsight, that was a mistake. I probably should have just jumped him right away. But he did have the Warrior Priest support. He did have this support of the Jade Wizard. So it was I knew it was gonna be a very atrocious fight. And, you know, Hellebron, unlike Franz, unlike the Warrior Priest, doesn't have access to heals. So I had to be very careful when I was gonna pick that engagement. I was trying to find a spot where I could get him a little bit more isolated for that duel. The Death Hag, you know, it's around, it's waiting to drop some more buffs. It wanted to help out in this frontline fight, but recognizing that there were still 3 heroes there, and then that the archers were sort of shifting their attention onto the large target of the Death Hag, you'll notice I have to pull them back and kite quite a bit. The Fire Princes Dragonborn have come back into the fight, but they get tied up on a unit of Harganeth Blackguard, and the Harganeth and everything else sort of basically comes and collapses on them and reacts right away. This was a good thing for me, actually, because it gave Hellebron something to do. With her Cursed Blade, you can see, and Malakos going down, like the Fireborn are just taking a ton of damage. With, you know, all these resources distracted to deal with the Fireborn, maybe I overcommit a little bit here. The the Illyrian Reaver archers get into the organ gun, take that offline, and there's Jade Wizard and Warrior Priest who also successfully push for it. But the organ gun, like, it's so close to the front line because of the way this map was deployed. Like, you have a huge hill in the middle. Like, it probably wasn't that useful anyways. At least certainly not shooting these frontline troops. It looks like maybe they had repositioned to shoot at the sisters or the sword masters. So yeah, there may be some value, but there was not a lot of space between the cannon and the front line at this point. Blackguard are beasting. These cannons have also been wrapped up between the spearmen, the White Lions, and the Illyrian Reaver archers. So scary time for us. We have very little mobility, and we've lost basically all of our shooting power, aside from 2 units of Dark Riders with repeater crossbow, who I skirted over here to take out the Great Cannon. Probably not a good decision because, okay, yes, I traded it, but because they were not here to sort of obstruct the Illyrian Reaver archers, we lost like an organ gun and 2 cannons for 1 cannon. So I think that was probably a bad decision by me in hindsight. But at least these iron breakers are not going to be shot up by the overwatch from the cannon fire. So the Cauldron, she's not afraid of these Fireborn. Remember, the Death Hag does have Fear and Terror. So with Fear and Terror, if you drop a rear charge on an infantry unit, plus support of Hellebron with her Cursed Blade, like, that is going to munch through units. Here's a unit of White Lions, a Trace, and some Spearmen. And you can see their health pool is just falling to pieces. So what was originally kind of a tough fight for me, the Blackguard completely surrounded, is decisively turned in our favor. And the Shadow Sorceress is at this point very low on health, so I have to be careful with her. But it looks like at this point all the High Elf infantry has been wiped, except for 1 unit of Sword Masters. The High Elf player has lost Alarielle, so the only real threat is this 3 stack of archers in the back. And then we have the Empire Death Ball with not much else left behind. So it's time to start pulling these Harganeth Executioners into the action. We're chasing down some routing troops over here, sort of jockeying for position. We didn't have mobility really to deal with these archers other than these repeater crossbows, but they're busy, doing a nice charge into the crossbowmen back here. It's not a great fight for them, but with the charge bonus, first of all, it stops them from shooting for a little bit. Secondly, look at all the resources from the Empire it pulled over here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 units that came over to help. It's dropped its leadership to below half, and I can always cycle charge out and cycle charge back in again, but at least the Harganeth Executioners aren't being shot by it during this time. This unit was inactive for a little bit more than it should have been, so my bad on the micro, and yeah, they're getting absolutely hammered by the archers. So definitely good job on my opponent for making me pay there. Looks like a cannon crew has rallied. We'll see if they, come back and man their guns later on. Death Hag is getting tied up by some spears here, but she's punting them around like it's no big deal. And now she's going to come help out in the fight, the mainline fight. So if you look at this point, I mean, our cannons are offline. The repeater crossbows are pretty low. I mean, I think the crossbowmen did manage to hold because they did get support here from the other troops. And the balance bar, because of this Empire Death Ball, has shifted back in our opponent's favor, but it's very, very close, and it's sort of too hard to tell for sure who's going to win this. The Empire troops have taken some pretty significant damage at this point, so if I could wipe these Sword Masters off of the field, I felt pretty confident that I would be able to win this engagement. Fortunately, I brought the Blades of the Blood Queen, which are the premier infantry unit in the game, and with the support of Hellebron and this Gaze of Cain going down in a huge circle, they were going to absolutely demolish these Sword Masters like no big deal. So I think a lot of players, they would be tempted to maybe go chase after these archer units and just get them to stop shooting in. But I think sometimes it's good to avoid that temptation. If you don't have the ability to go and take them out, what you're going to do is you're going to play cat and mouse with them for a really long time. And because I only have like, let's say one mobile unit like here, they're going to send over the spears. They're going to tie me up with these Lyrian Reaver archers. And it's not going to be able to make contact with these 3 units enough. And at the most, I can hit 1 unit at a time, which means that while I'm hitting the 1 unit, the other 2 units are shooting at me, which would be sort of a bad scenario. So these swordmasters, I mean, the damage in melee can usually, be dished out faster than the damage from ranged. So I was confident that I was going to be able to kill these swordmasters faster than I was going to be shot at by the archers, and that's what happened. Now with the swordmasters gone, we have a full surround, and then the scary Halloween Avatar of Cain comes in here. Death Hag, fear and terror on all these Empire troops. So the weakness of this Empire, like Death Ball, and Empire in general, is usually leadership, right? So unless you have those leadership buffs going off, these guys are going to buckle. And at this point in time, the Warrior Priest and the Karl Franz did not have their leadership buffs active. And so it was the perfect time for this Death Hag to come in here and just break up the Death Ball. I knew if I could break up this Death Ball, then we were going to probably win the frontline engagement, and it was going to be a good situation for us. This is the situation I was hoping for, because if I can break off... Oh, there's a big AoE from the Warrior Priest, but if I could break this pocket up and get Karl Franz isolated and then kill Franz with Hellebron, then I was feeling pretty good about our chances of this battle. So look, balance bar still very even. Death Hag's taken a lot of fire from the crossbowman and other things. Hellebron is at about just over 50% health. Karl Franz, max health, plus he has the support of the Warrior Priest. So very sketchy situation for me. I think I should have had the Blades of the Blood Queen on guard mode. If I didn't do that, that was a mistake, because they shouldn't have been chasing off the spearmen. I needed them to help in the front pocket. But with the White Lines of Trace here, I just redirected the charge, and they were able to find another suitable target, which was good for me. What I didn't want is for these units to be inactive. So this is something I just want to point out. Like, if you're going to try a gank build, you have to remember to also have mass so that you can get on your target. So this was super useful. Bring the Death Hag. I could just push all of these great swords and halberdiers and other, at this point they were basically routing troops out of the way so that I could get to my target and stick on my target with Hellebron. So Blackguard coming in here, their leadership is basically impeccable. They're going to fight to the end. Same thing with these Iron Breakers. Fury of Cain going down again. I dropped the Fury of Cain on Crone Hellebron, and she is going to work on Karl Franz. If you look at Franz, he was at full health. He's popping all his buffs. He's doing whatever he can. But Hellebron is like, let's see. At this point, 642 with 130 melee attack. Does it go up from there? No. But Franz is heading for the hills. Blade of the Blood, the Cauldron is pretty much done, but it's just trying to run through as many units as it possibly can before it has to go. Hellebron has finally, found her mark. Franz is down, and our lines are really thin at this point. Like, I mean, the balance bar is slightly in our favor, but we've lost all the mobility advantage. I think in the older version of this game, before they dropped a patch where that sort of discouraged kiting, we probably would have lost this game, because at this point I have maybe 10 Dark Riders with repeater crossbows and Hellebron. Oh, okay. I have a second unit. Okay, so we're good, yeah. So at this point, there's no real threats for Hellebron. The archers have used all of their ammo. And again, I think this is why you got to be really careful not to use archer non-pen armor on high armor targets, because come late game, you're going to be like, okay, now what? because they could have been sniping at Hellebron. They could have been, sniping out those reaper or repeater. I always say that wrong. Repeater crossbows. So yeah, now they're pretty much useless and forced to run into combat. Uh, Ironbreakers are able to get onto these white lions. Blackguard coming into help. Not a whole lot going on here at this point. Gonna try and break off this Jade Wizard so that we can just secure the victory. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here. So Hellebron pushes through this front line. I'm not worried about the remaining spears. I use the Dark Riders to sort of tie this up. I thought it was on a horse. In hindsight, that was unnecessary. Because the Jade Wizard was just on foot, and actually that was a. If you don't need to use these to catch something, don't, is basically my suggestion. Because what happened, and it took me a while to realize this, Crone Hellebron, even though I had issued an attack order on the Jade Wizard, she was getting blocked by her own units. Like these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows were preventing Crone Hellebron from finishing the job. So that's just something small to watch out for. If you're ever chasing down units, like think about how are you going to get your high damage unit in contact with the model that you want to be pursuing. Full surround going down here, but like Ironbreakers and Blackguard of Nagrand, like they're not going anywhere, especially when you have the debuff, the poison coming from the Sisters of Slaughter. Jade Wizard, like when I finally realized that the clumping was blocking Hellebron, I pulled the Dark Riders with repeater crossbow out of the way. You see that's what's happening here. Not far out of the way enough because it ran actually into my crossbows, but so I had to pull them away again. But yeah, there it goes. Now with Hellebron finally able to make contact, she drops the Jade Wizard, the leadership breaks, and the game ends. So very well played, fun game. I'm gonna fast forward here and we'll get to the battle screen. So, parting thoughts. Crone Hellebron, she did what she was supposed to do. She was able to deal with, with the support of the Cauldron and some of the other, backline troops. The Dragonborn, she took out Alarielle with the support of Ungrim. So nice job to Navarre for recognizing Alarielle was out of position and punishing her right away. Like I pretty much only had to finish her off. It was mostly Savari that did that initial chunk of damage with Ungrim. The Empire, yeah, Navarre. I mean, his Ironbreakers were super useful. The Slayers, they helped out in the back line with the Reaver Archers, the Fireborn, all this. I did think at some point they ended up getting caught on Spearmen, so not the best, but sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures, and they did what they had to do. At least they're unbreakable, so you knew they were going to hold the line for a little bit. The cannons, not like I guess the Organ Gun got 2 chevrons, so this is probably blasting into the Sword Masters or some other, maybe the Sisters. Overall, like they weren't online for a ton of time, but it was enough because it pulled them into us, and that's really all that we wanted the other team to do. And then an unfortunate break for Levin Super. He had like an initial loss of Alarielle. Had he kept Alarielle alive, I mean, you saw how close the balance bar was. Probably some AoE heals into that Empire Death Ball. This game would have had a very different outcome. So, maybe we were a little bit lucky there. Maybe it was just a good play on behalf of Navarre, and overall a very fun game. And that's it from me. Thanks so much. Bye.